We are now in question 44 of Prima Secunda of the Summa Theologia, and this is continuing on the passions of the soul, which is going to end with question 48, and then we're going to get into, I believe, the habits will be the next one, and then we'll go into the virtues after that. So hopefully you enjoy this kind of slow and methodical journey through the Summa, one question at a time. Question 44 has 4 articles, shouldn't take that much time. It is the effects of fear. So what happens to us, body and soul, when we experience fear? And I continue to be pretty amazed at how much space in the Summa, St. Thomas Aquinas is spending on fear. And next, you know what? He's going to go into daring tomorrow, and then anger, and then, the whole next section will be on the habits, a treatise on the habits, and then the virtues as well. So let's go on. Article 1, whether fear causes contraction. And I got to admit, when I see the word contraction, the first thought I think of is like the contractions that women have when they're pregnant, because, my wife has given birth to 3 children. But I had to actually look it up. Contraction has to do with a withdrawal of the emotions, pulling inward, kind of like what this guy is doing, a contraction, where rather than act out, you bring it back in. And Thomas says, in the passions of the soul, the formal element is the movement of the appetitive power, right? That's where you're going out to something, you're drawn to something, while the bodily transmutation is the material element. So here you have form and matter, which continues to play a very big part in the Summa. Both of these are mutually proportionate, and consequently the bodily transmutation assumes a resemblance to and the very nature of the appetitive movement. All right, so how interesting that the appetite and the form and the matter and all the passions, it all ties together. Now, as to the appetitive movement of the soul, fear implies a certain contraction, the reason of which is that fear arises from the imagination of some threatening evil which is difficult to repel. But that a thing be difficult to repel is due to a lack of power, as was stated previously, and the weaker the power is, the fewer the things to which it extends. Wherefore, from the very imagination that causes fear, there ensues a certain contraction in the appetite. So fear can cause us to feel hopeless. We feel like we can't do anything. We feel weak, and so we contract. Thus we observe in one who is dying that nature withdraws inwardly on account of the lack of power. And again, we see the inhabitants of a city, when seized with fear, leave the outskirts and, as far as possible, make for the inner quarters. It is in resemblance to this contraction which pertains to the appetite of the soul that in fear a similar contraction of heat and vital spirits towards the inner parts takes place in regard to the body. And then interesting, so this is actually a very good picture that really highlights this, is that we go inward, we contract, right? Article 2, whether fear makes one suitable for counsel. A man of counsel may be taken in 2 ways. First, from his being willing or anxious to take counsel. And thus fear makes men of counsel because, as the philosopher says, we take counsel on great matters because therein we distrust ourselves. Now, things which make us afraid are not simply evil, but have a certain magnitude, both because they seem difficult to repel and because they are apprehended as near to us. Wherefore, men seek for counsel, especially when they are afraid. Again, it goes back to this whole idea of we feel hopeless. We feel like we can't do anything, and so we want to ask the advice of somebody else. Secondly, a man of counsel means one who is apt for giving good counsel, and in this sense, neither fear nor any passion makes men of counsel, because when a man is affected by a passion, things seem to him greater or smaller than they really are. Thus, to a lover, what he loves seems better, and to him that fears, what he fears seems more dreadful. Consequently, owing to the want of right judgment, every passion considered in itself hinders the faculty of giving good counsel. I think that kind of goes without saying, that if you're overcome with fear, you're probably not going to be, reaching out to your friends, to ask them what you can do to help them or counsel them. Does fear make one tremble? In fear, there takes place a certain contraction from the outward to the inner parts of the body, the result being that the outer parts become cold, and for this reason, trembling is occasioned in these parts, because caused by a lack of power in controlling the members, which lack the power is due to the want of heat, which is the instrument whereby the soul moves these members, as stated in De Anima 3:4. Okay, now he's quoting Aristotle. Now, Aristotle lived a good 1,500 years before Aquinas. Aquinas was relying very much on his science, and so I don't know how reliable it was or is. But anyways, that's how he answered. Article 4 on fear, whether fear hinders action. Man's exterior actions are caused by the soul as first mover, but by the bodily members as instruments. Now, action may be hindered both by defect of the instrument and by defect of the principal mover, which is the soul. On the part of the bodily instruments, fear considered in itself is always apt to hinder exterior action on account of the outward members being deprived through fear of their heart. All right, so when you're afraid, it's almost like you become stupefied and you can't act because you're in a way deprived of that ability to move because you're so afraid. But on the part of the soul, if the fear be moderate, without much disturbance of the reason, it conduces to working well insofar as it causes a certain solicitude and makes a man take counsel and work with greater attention. If, however, fear increases so much as to disturb the reason, it hinders action even on the part of the soul, but of such a fear the apostle does not speak. Okay, so he's talking about St. Paul, the apostle, and what he said about fear in Scripture, which is interesting. I think that probably referred to one of the objections, I'm guessing, because he just kind of brought St. Paul seemingly out of the blue. All right, those are the 4 articles of question 44 of the effects of fear. This is going to wrap up fear. Tomorrow we go into daring. We have 4 more questions in this treatise on the passions. I think a couple of them are going to be on daring, and then a couple on anger, and then we move on to the next section. Thanks for watching. God bless you.